And we're live, guys.
All
Welcome
right.
everybody back to the Talking Games podcast, where I'm here with Kenwell and Oz the Wiz or Oshus. Fellas, how you guys doing today?
Doing great. I can't wait to talk about this Xbox
Good,
news.
man.
So, should we just skip
Good.
what you're playing and just get straight right into it?
Good. I'm down.
All right,
I'm down for
let's
whatever.
do that.
Let's
But I
get
will
it.
say I've been playing the Altars. I think I said that the last time. Really good game, fun concept, but and generally I would like to talk a lot more about it more because I've been playing a little bit more and I'm starting to even enjoy it a lot more than usual. But yeah, let's get right into the news with Xbox and the layoffs. So on July 2nd, 2025, Microsoft announced approximately 9,000 cuts, impacting around 4% of its total global workforce. Significant reductions occurred within the Xbox division, leading to the cancellation of several projects and the closure of a studio. Everwild, Rare's long-time anticipated game, was in development for a decade, has been cancelled. Perfect Dark, the reboot by the initiative, has been shelved, along with the studio being shut down. Turn Turntime Studios, developer of Forza Motorsport, faced significant layoffs, with reports indicating up to 50% staff reduction. And ZeniMax Online Studios, an unannounced MMORPG codenamed Blackbird, has been cancelled. This game was apparently in development for 7 years, and the projected release date was a 10-year development cycle. So it's been a you could say bloodbath, but I don't even know if these layoffs are more than what we experienced last year. But the key thing is there's still more layoffs happening, and this could be a course of integration with Activision Blizzard. It could be a strategic shift. It could be Game Pass, as some people have said. There's many theories going on as to what's been going on. Sorry, why these layoffs are happening, even though Xbox has more or less announced why it's happening. But I'm kind of go to you first. What do you think? What does this mean for the Xbox gaming division going forward? And I guess maybe even from let me not say culture, but from a partnership point of view, has Xbox damaged its brand, or is it a situation where no, everything moves as usual? It's just us, the analysis online, who care about these details, and the general consumer doesn't care if Xbox fires all these people as long as they keep producing games. What are your thoughts?
I think what it comes back to is every single time I think Xbox is starting to gain like just solid footing, they go 3 steps back. I don't know what's going to happen in terms of developers wanting to go to these studios. I don't see what's the motivation here at all, because a lot of them that they purchased, they haven't scaled up enough to make the big games that Microsoft would pay attention to. Because at this point, Microsoft, where Phil Spencer was trying to get these small games to launch and Xbox is going to be the platform for that, they can't afford to do that. So if you don't have a heavy hitting game like Compulsion Games and Ninja Theory, other studios, then what good are you for? And again, these studios, you can't make that jump because Xbox, the higher ups, don't know how to product manage a big AAA release, and the studio is not built enough to release a AAA game. So I don't know where this goes when it comes to supporting the Game Pass brand and making it something that's attractive for just your everyday consumer, when there's better alternatives and there's just no identity. So again, this is typical Xbox. I feel like they were gaining steady ground, and then they just go, I said 3 before, but 5 steps backwards.
Okay. Yeah, that's a general view of what's going on. We'll get into the details a little bit more as to why this is happening, who's to blame for the situation, where the brand goes from here on forward. But Ushers, before we go into those details, what are your general thoughts on what you've seen from the Xbox? Sorry, well, just from these layoffs in general, and what do you think this means for the brand?
Well, I mean, this is the worst case or the worst outcome. Like this is what like we've or like yeah. When I say we, I mean like as people that are into the Xbox brand as like a console platform, we feared like the moment they said they lost was it last year, just before June, in that awkward conversation where they were basically saying, "Well, yeah, we're gonna start going third party." I sort of saw this coming. Like my thing was like, yeah, this is the direction that we're going to go. We're gonna double down on this, and all these other things you can forget about. Like all these like sort of like first party aspirations, hardware aspirations. You can forget about this if this is what they're doubling down on. And even Game Pass, I feel that like all that doesn't matter anymore. What matters now is making sure that they support the most powerful franchises that they have and see if they can't get any more franchises that will be able to print money. But like, yeah, that it's not a positive picture. But this is like, yeah, this is what we feared as like the core Xbox audience, that this is the direction that we were gonna go, and unfortunately we were right. It's exactly what ended up happening.
Okay. In terms of specific reasons, right? So let's point to the game cancellations, etc., etc. Um, is Microsoft or Xbox, I should say, justified in some of these cuts? And just to be clear, when I say justification, I'm not necessarily talking about people losing their jobs, but just from an analytical point of view, can we assess these cuts and can we assess these game cancellations and say this made sense or this didn't make sense? I'll go to you first again, Aushus. What are your thoughts on that? Well, let me
So
lay out
first
some
thing
of
is that
the
like
let,
I
let me lay
think
out some of the points that I
yeah.
have again. Everwild was in development for
Mhm.
over a decade, and then was cancelled. Perfect Dark was in development for 7 years.
Yes.
The development studio had development problems, and there seemed to be no end in sight. So 7 plus years. Turnstile Studios released Forza Motorsport 7, and
Yep.
they lost 50% of their staff. And then Max Online Studios, they were working on an MMORPG, which was a looter shooter called Blackbird, and that was in
Mhm.
development for 7 years. And its projected release date was 2028, meaning that the game would have been in development for
Yeah.
10 years. So, given that information, which ones do you think were justified, which ones do you think were not justified, etc., etc.?
So like my first thing, like Ty, like that, it's for the longest time, Phil Spencer and Microsoft told us that like, well, we can justify taking risks on certain projects, and these projects that they took risks on, if I look at the library and the games that you just mentioned, are those games, a lot of them, because of the fact that like the whole thing behind like, and I think everybody's forgotten this, the whole model behind Game Pass was that Game Pass exists, and because Game Pass exists, we can afford to support any size game or any shape game, and we don't, and then we can then give the developers freedom to develop the game that they want at their pace, at their rate, because we're not worried about shipping this game and how much it's going to sell, because it'll live on in Game Pass. That was the dream. That's what they sold us from about 2020, is to say, no, don't worry about the sales, don't worry about like how well these games do at retail or on Steam. Worry about like whether or not, like once it's out there, or worry more about giving the devs time to finish their dream or their vision. That's more important. And for some reason, it looks like in the last 2 years that's changed. That's no longer the priority. Because to me, then that explains why all those games got cut. Because if you're a person that's looking at those games and looking at how much money you've lost on them and how much more money you still have to spend on marketing and selling these games, it's a zero sum game for you. It's like, no, like there's no ways you want to spend more time on Everwild or on Perfect Dark or any other project that they've been working on since 2017. The only reason those projects made any sort of feasible sense was because of the fact that they sold us this dream that Game Pass will always support these games regardless, because they will always live on in that streaming service. They don't need initial sales to make them relevant or sellable. So yeah, that's the gamble they took. I honestly, I understand what they did now. If they are pivoting to being a publisher and Game Pass was not successful, that's what makes sense to me. I don't know if that
Okay.
answers your question.
No. Before we move on, Rally Car Delta Gaming or Gaming Over 30 says there's nothing really strange about the games they cut, as that same cut and run strategy for game sitting developments longer than 5 years with no road to release is happening across the industry. In short, what he's saying is it was justified. Not in a bad way, but one of the questions I've asked some of my friends who maybe I would just say PlayStation guys is that, oh, this is bad, they shouldn't have done this. And I'll say, would Sony and Nintendo have these games running for 10 years straight? You can make an argument that Sony and Nintendo wouldn't let it get this far, but the fact that they wouldn't let it get this far means that they would have cut it way earlier. So I don't think Sony has a game running for 10 years in general and they think, yeah, let's keep it running even though we don't have a release date and time window. The only time I believe they did this was for there was a game called Lost Guardian, and even that was because it seemed like Yoshida did it because it was a very personal game to him that he just wanted it to succeed, even though it had development timeline. Now, overall, in the end, I don't think Sony was too happy with that decision, but there's always going to be consequences to these actions. But Ken Wall, what do you think? Given the information we've found out about this game, especially Blackbird, because there's been reports about what that game is about. It was a looter shooter, MMORPG. But Xbox has to look at the future and what is viable. Were they justified in cutting these games off?
It's like hard for me. I'm stuck in a hard place. For Xbox's strategy, these games would do well for the Game Pass. These are, I hate to quote it, but like Game Pass games. These so I think the Blackbird would have been good. I think the studio, they're the Elder Scrolls Online studio that brings in a lot of money. So I would trust their expertise. I get it. The development for it was a long time, but the games, the projects that they canceled, I could see being hits for Game Pass because, again, the games just keep living on their live service. These games have been doing well on that type of service, but it comes down to the management. It always comes down to the management, where Xbox just gives these guys they just give them the longest rope, and I don't know why they just let this shit get out of control. I'm happy that Perfect Dark got canceled because there's no reason why Perfect Dark should have taken that long to make. There's just no reason why that's just I think that's the biggest failure from Xbox that I've seen. That's top Halo Infinite. I think I don't understand how you let Perfect Dark, just a single player action game, like just go away like this. So I'm happy that they this was obviously needed, but I think the games would have worked. I do think the games would have worked. So that's what I gotta say.
When it comes to the actual cancellations, do you think this had an okay? Well, let me put it this way: Microsoft has been known to be the ones, pushing the buttons, telling the Xbox guys what to do, and that may be true. That may not be true. Do you think this decision was more of a Phil Spencer, Matt Booty, Sarah Bond decision, or do you think this has Microsoft's paws all over it, Ken?
I think with everything, Microsoft has their paws over it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get the word, Phil Spencer gets the word that you got to cut people. And then Sarah Bond, the trio come discuss, and then they see what they got to cut. I think that's, to me, I think that's what's happening. Microsoft has their paws on all of the decisions. They just don't, their ears are not to the ground to see, oh, this project has been going on for this long, the budget, they get that stuff late. So all the responsibility goes to the main trio at Xbox. I don't think I think that's what happened. So oh shit.
If I go to you, Ashos, Game Over 30 says there's definitely a gray area to the discussion, of course, of Justified. Justified can take a lot of meanings, and everyone probably has a different take on their chances. And speaking of that, the EA Japanese president mentioned how he doesn't like the layoffs, and I responded back to him asking him what would he do if a game was in 7-year development cycles or 10-year development cycles, and he gave a response which was good, and he said that he would keep the games running because he feels at that point that you've invested so much in it that he spoke about the morale side of things, and you might as well just finish it off no matter what it is because you already spent so much time. Now, I didn't want to press him too much on it because obviously, as we know, EA is known for canceling games and closing our studios as well. But he's EA Japan, so he might have a different take. He has to probably take orders from the guys in the West. The question that I thought would have been interesting to ask him is, when you're in a situation where the end date has no sight, you might want to keep supporting that studio, but if you actually believe that studio can't finish the game, and if you realize that you can allocate your resources in different locations that is actually going to yield better benefits to the company, what do you do in that sense? One of the points I've mentioned a few times is that people ask, well, why do CEOs or why do the senior managers make money? And it's because they're willing to make harsh decisions that we think is deplorable or bad or evil or whatever, but it ends up yielding better return for the people who actually have an invested interest. Shu Yoshida, I'm not sure, I'll come to you in a second, but Yoshida said, that he cancels so many games. He's like, I cancel so many games at different points of development, early and even mid-time, and there's games that you never heard of that are gone. And it's hard because the developers making these games, they believe in their game, but he just knows that this is not going to be financially viable. It might be a cool game, but when it drops, it's not going to make the money, and you're going to have the layoffs and cuts. So Yoshida does it. I think EA does it. And one of the points I think is important is when Xbox, did the layoffs a few years ago, and they said, we're taking that money and we're going to reallocate it to other areas in the business. And what if you were told that that area was more Game Pass titles like Club Scare? What if it was, Silk Song? What if it was, we're going to give that resource to, Playground Games so Fable can be a better product for you? What if we're going to take that money and start making Fallout 5 now? So we got to reallocate these resources to where we think is going to be beneficial for everybody. I asked one of some of these guys I was talking to, and I said, if, it's a hypothetical and maybe not a good one, but I said, if you found out that the money from Tango Gameworks was going into Obsidian to create a new team to make Fallout 5 or Fallout New Vegas 2, and what would you say? And his response was, no, I don't care. Keep Tango. The next question was, well, did you play Hi-Fi Rush? No, I didn't.
But Ty, don't you think that's a little too optimistic? The relocation of that money, the resources.
No, not at all. Because I think that is what's happening. I think obviously there's this push talk about AI, but
that's why I think that's where it goes towards.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, keep going.
I think when it comes to resources, for example, when Tango was shut down, people forgot that like there was a new studio called in Poland that Activision created called, is it
I know what you're
Evergreen?
talking about.
Elsewhere
Yeah.
Studio, right? And everyone was shocked, like, well, why is that happening? Like, well, Elsewhere Studio is making a AAA blockbuster game, narrative driven, apparently. So we have evidence that the money is being reallocated in other aspects. And I think that's generally what happens in business, right? And when EA cancels some of these games, is because they want to, focus that money into other aspects of the business that's going to grow it. It's never going to be a one-to-one for sure, but there is something to be said about that. And let me just get to some of these chats. Um, Hound says, I said at the time Microsoft buying all these companies would end badly. He did. I remember he did. I remember that. Given over 30 says Xbox hands-off style does allow games to go for a long time, and then the end comes when Microsoft gets financially cautious. Very true. That's me. Hound as well says, why is Bethesda allowed to take nearly 20 years to make Elder Scrolls 6, but this game gets cancelled after how long? That's a good point to make. Before I get to Ushers, do you want to answer that, Ken? Why is Bethesda allowed to take nearly 20 years to make Elder Scrolls 6, but this game gets cancelled after just 7 years?
I think it's probably because Phil and Todd Howard, don't they got a tight relationship? So it's fine. I think it probably comes down to that, because there's no reason now that we got a release date for GTA 6, there's no reason why Elder Scrolls 6 should take this long. And then especially with Starfield, they got a lot of, Bethesda got a lot of ammunition, like they got a loaded clip waiting for them. It's like every single time they do something, it's just more ammunition from the gamers just waiting. Like, it's like, all right, where is Elder Scrolls 6? Where's Fallout 5? There's just not much going on with Bethesda that I'm surprised this one didn't. I thought this acquisition would have done a lot for the brand itself, but it just didn't. It went the other way.
Okay. Ken, now, I think that question actually ties into, Oshus, I think that question actually ties into what I'm going to ask you, which is, what are the reasons for these layoffs and cuts, in the sense, what I mean by that is, who are to blame really? Is this a question of Microsoft stepping in and just saying, make like cut this, cut that? Is this an element of the Xbox game studios taking a look at their portfolio and actually saying, nah, we need to cut some of these games off loose? Who are you attributing the blame to for these, you can call it mismanagement, you could call it layoffs, whatever you want to call it, but who are you pointing the finger to?
I think it's I think the easiest way to put it is it's collective incompetence, because at no point in time should this have been again, it's so complicated, because aside from the fact that Microsoft Studios, the studios that they bought on their own in 2017 have materialized nothing, the bloat that they got from Activision has also caused them problems. And when we talk about the layoffs, because that has always been Activision's business model. I think I said this to you earlier, that the only person that's laid off more people than Phil Spencer was Bobby Kotick, because of how Activision Blizzard was structured. So if you buy that, you know what you're buying into. So this is built into, it's not something that's the Activision Blizzard side, which is actually probably where most of the people were fired or laid off. That was built into that system. When you talk about Bethesda, that then adds another complex layer, because again, there's also some sort of certain things that overlap if you buy a studio as big as Bethesda, and you need to manage that. So there's that as well. But there's no simple answer here. There's no simplistic answer to say, well, this is, but all I can say is that this is all the result of you just absorbing too many studios at once without a clear strategy. If we have to go back to Microsoft's own studios, like handful of studios, they couldn't Matt Booty couldn't manage just the Xbox studios, like including the Initiative and all those studios. He couldn't manage those so that they could be able to produce, say, a game that was like worthwhile, that was a hit. When you give him Activision and then you give him Bethesda, what the fuck? Like, I mean, it's like, well, what sort of like, what do you expect? I get it. I know why he's still there, because they've made 1-2 decisions that are very profitable for Microsoft. But every other studio that I've had to manage, they've done a horrible job at it. Like, the proof is in the pudding. Like, what have they actually launched that has changed their fortunes? Almost nothing. Like, the closest thing that came to doing that was Starfield. Besides Starfield, there is nothing that's not a pre-existing franchise that was made by someone else that has done anything for them. And now they're actually killing any future franchises that have the potential to do anything. Like, so this is not a group of people that are trying to get you new IPs that are gonna make more money. And I just want to go back to your question, or the one thing that you raised about like budget. Well, if we stop, what is this Everwild, or the studio that's making Everwild, we take all those resources that they've been using, let's say for 10 years, and then we're now gonna reallocate them to a different studio. I'm like, no, you've already spent 6 to 8 years of resources. Just finish the freaking game, bro. Like, I mean, like you starting over to make a new project without finishing the previous project. The cost of that project are going to be like not even a fraction of what you already spent. So there's no logic there in terms of like, well, you're saving money. No, there's no saving money. Finish. If you need to fire people, just manage the freaking studios correctly. Fire the people that you need to fire. Hire the people that you need to hire so you can finish a project. This thing of just shutting down multiple projects at once shows that you cannot deliver. You're incapable of delivering on projects that you started within your own studios that you didn't inherit. It's as simple as that. Like, you guys have collective incompetence. That name a project that you guys were responsible for from inception to delivery that actually delivered and became successful. None. Like, and like, how are you sitting here 15 years and you've done none of that? All your success has either been bought or inherited.
And like, even when a project is in the middle, they can't even manage it. Because Redfall,
Yes.
I remember Matt Booty's bullshit excuse. He was like, yeah, Bethesda at the time wasn't integrated into the Xbox portfolio, so I couldn't do anything. I'm like, what the fuck? What do you mean? What are you talking about? Like, just go check on the studio and check the game.
Bro, it's that simple. Like, it's that simple. Manage. That's your job. Manage. Like, and like, they don't manage, and then everybody's shocked when everyone loses their jobs. Look, if I was someone within that studio, like, I would be very much more, because it looks like they give you enough room to sort of like be self-sufficient and sort of like sort of direct your project the way you want it to be directed. But if it fails, then it fails. But like, of course, like, it's the same thing like I was saying to Ty the other day. Like, a lot of the guys that they actually bought out just took the piss. None of them actually worked. None of them, because if you actually worked under those conditions with all Microsoft's money and you were able to use it effectively, right now you would be in a very positive position, which I think like a studio like Obsidian did. Obsidian actually got to work and they delivered on their projects, and they've delivered on multiple projects. Whereas everybody else, what the fuck is everybody else dicking around? What the fuck is, like, what is the Undead Labs doing? They've been dicking around. I won't even go into the initiative. What is it? The initiative?
Bro, it's like the problem is they took D1 college athletes thinking they could just compete.
Exactly.
That's the thing. Compulsion, Undead Labs, the initiative, a lot of those studios that they bought were not ready for AAA games. And that's what they didn't understand. Like South of Midnight, what I was happy about with the layoffs was it didn't affect Compulsion like that. But I was glad when I played South of Midnight because it showed, okay, these guys can make a pretty good game at this level. It was AA. It was enjoyable. Let's see if they can now make a jump to AAA. Give them more resources. Let's see, because it was based off of their previous work. With a lot of the games like Initiative, you were just hiring because of what they did before, but they didn't do anything in the Xbox ecosystem. So to just give them a big ass project like that made no sense. You're expecting college athletes to just start competing in the professional field. Like, that's not going to work. And you should have known that.
And again, like, why are you not managing them? Even if you want them to, like, why are you not managing them? Like, this is the weirdest thing to me. Like, what's been going on is the fact that, like, they're actually surprised when these fucking projects fail. Like, I was just looking at like how everyone was surprised at Redfall. I'm like, you telling me you guys had no idea that you had a you had a ticking time bomb chilling in your offices, and like no one was paying attention. Like, huh? Like, I don't know, dude. Like, it's the weirdest way to run a business.
How about this question for you guys then? If these stickers were managed properly, let's say Perfect Dark was coming out in 2025, and it's gonna probably average a 87 Metacritic. Let's say the game by the ZeniMax Online Studios team that was coming out 2025 as well. That was gonna probably manage high 80s, right? And let's say Everwild was also coming out this year, and that was gonna average in the high 80s. Do you think we see these massive cuts at Xbox still? Because I guess what I'm trying to say is, what is the part of it? Which part of it is Microsoft actually reviewing these, saying, "What the hell is this? This is crap. This is crap. This is crap." Because the point I've said a few times now is, why didn't Ninja Theory get cut? Why didn't Compulsion games get cut? Because it seems there's a direct correlation between studios that can release a game and can maybe maintain their budget, they get safe. Whereas the guys who are losing, who are getting cut, they're the ones they're the ones in trouble. Again, Forza Motorsport 7, and the report said that game took around 6 or 7 years to make as well, which is a long timeline, and it took that long to make, and the game came out and it wasn't not efficient. It wasn't broken, but it wasn't in great condition, right? And it didn't hit the Metacritic score that they wanted, or even the sales figures or Game Pass players. So now the question is, we've given you all this time to make this project, and it's kind of underperformed, and now you want more money to make a sequel. So what's that? Another 7 years for with like 150 million, and then it doesn't do the same numbers again. Do we really want to invest in that? How about we just slash you by 50% right now? If Forza Motorsport 7 had actually done well and met expectations, do we see a 50% cut? That's the question I'm posing to you guys.
I think we do. Regardless, I think we do see a cut. There's not a. I'm just trying to think of the layoffs before.
Sorry, Cam. Before you fire away, let me just read Young Sandwich's point. He says, I asked him a question. What did I ask him again? I says, do you think that they bought the wrong studios? And he says, no, I think Phil Spencer doesn't know what he's doing at this point. It's not the first time this type of thing has happened, and he's always smack dab in the middle of it. In general, I don't think Microsoft knows what they're doing. Look how terrible their other products are run. Office 365, Windows, everything else is just not coherent. Okay. I don't know if I agree fully. Yeah, I think I think with the gaming side of things, that's what I know. I think there's a very strong argument that not I don't think they don't know what they're doing. I think the execution is so poor that they have to keep pivoting left and right. But anyways, Ken, go ahead.
Yeah, there's not an exact science to these layoffs because didn't Hi-Fi Rush release, and I'm pretty sure the budget was pretty manageable, and then they got canceled. Then Zane again, Project Blackbird, to give people, I would expect them and Rare to get the most leash because they got a money machine for them. Sea of Thieves and Elder Scrolls Online. But they got axed. So I think when it's your day, it's just your day. That's just what I think when it comes to these layoffs. But what sucks is let's just keep it a buck. At least if I'm Microsoft, if I'm Satya Nadella, and I'm looking on the outside, and I'm like, how much do we get from these acquisitions? Like, what did we get from them in terms of products? You didn't get shit because you couldn't manage anything and you couldn't release the amount of products that you should have gotten. Like a lot of the games 2018, we should have at least got 2 games from those studios. But now we're not. Like, what was the output was abysmal from these studios. And now if I'm at the top of Microsoft, you just laid off all these people that aren't coming back, and now you got to start all over again to just get one product from them. So that's the biggest thing that I'm looking at. I'm like, this is terrible. This is terrible that you guys got this much output because the Xbox team couldn't manage these products.
All right. And Anashas, what's your take? Do you think if these games were successful, that we would be in a situation where maybe they wouldn't have cut these many cut these many employees, or are you of the opinion that regardless if these games were doing well, we would have seen massive cuts within Xbox?
Well, I mean, we saw massive cuts within like King. We saw massive cuts within Activision, including studios like Raven, who made like the single player component of Black Ops 6, probably their most successful game last year. Or was it this year? When did Black Ops 6 release last year? Yeah, so like them cutting studios, as I said to you earlier on, that's just how Activision manages their studios. So that is a part of Activision's business that they inherited. So yes, you were gonna get cuts. I mean, look at what Phil Spencer's statement was. We have more players than we've ever had before. Our services are more successful than they've ever been before. But still, you know what? Thank you for your service. Fuck you. Go home. That's essentially what happened. So you're gonna get cuts regardless of how successful you are. That's their business model. Their business model is not one that sustains your art based on whether it's successful or not. So now if we go back to like the actual Xbox studios and all of them that failed to launch games, first thing I'm gonna ask you is all these studios, have they not launched aside from the fucking initiative, which again was Phil Spencer and fucking Matt Booty's brain fart. So like outside that studio, all those other studios have made games before, launched games on time for other publishers, and I'm talking about all the other acquisitions. So these are people that can make and ship games. They've done it before under better management. That's what it comes down to. So there's no question whether or not they can ship games. It's whether or not you can ship games on the Xbox. And I'll make an example here. It's a very crude example, but I think it demonstrates what I'm trying to say. Bloober Studios has a project for Xbox. It ends up being that game I can't remember that was like a
The
6 to a
Medium?
7 out of 10. The Medium, yes. They make us a game for PlayStation Studios. It ends up being a highly acclaimed remake of Silent Hill 2. That to me, that is telling that if studios work with Sony, they deliver what Sony wants or what Sony has envisioned or wants them to produce. But if you're making games under Xbox Studios, results may vary. God knows how that shit is going to turn out.
Hmm.
And that's
Uh,
unfortunately what they've created. That's the perception everybody has.
wanted to highlight this point that Young Sandwiches brought up. Excuse me. He says the funniest blunder for me will always be Skype. When COVID hit and everyone needed a voice chat service to connect, Skype was installed on every single Windows machine in the world. They were at the finish line, literally, and out of nowhere came Zoom, laughed my ass off, and took everything away from Skype. I think what he's trying to allude to, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Kurt, is that even when victory or success is in front of Xbox, I think Ushers might agree with this, they somehow blunder and drop the ball at the finish line and they fail or they flop. Correct, Ushers?
Agreed. Like that's a brilliant example. They bought they bought Skype how many years ago? No one could have predicted COVID. No one could have predicted COVID, but this was the ideal time for Skype to become the most valuable conferencing app on the planet. Where is Skype now? Wasn't it closed down last year?
I have no idea. I don't use.
No,
I
like
don't use it.
Skype
I
doesn't
use
exist
Zoom.
anymore. They
That proves
tripled it
the
out.
point.
Oh man. Anyways, Young Sandwiches says 100% agree. The idea sounds like it would allow
May
for
5th.
creative freedom, but it seems like you just have a successful product with great reviews and player count is not enough for Xbox. Butticus Prime, are you there?
What happened?
No, just someone else. Butticus Prime, are you there? Nice. Maybe have some mic problems. He I wanted to drop some of his bars on, on his thoughts on the situation. But it seems we're kind of all aligned. Well, no, I'm a little bit different from you guys. I do think that if these studios were producing successes, while we will see cuts, I don't think they become as dire because it seems to me. Don't get me wrong, Microsoft might want to pivot, of course, and focus on AI and stuff like that. But to cut a division that is bringing you money and is growing the Xbox user base, the console user base, I think Xbox or Microsoft would be a little bit more hesitant to do that. But as soon as you see, sorry, Everwild 10 years, no. As soon as you see, the games from ZeniMax Online Studio, 7 years projected, 3 more years for it to complete, no, we're getting rid of that. So I think that's what we're seeing here. Now, the next question I'll put to you guys is talent. We've seen some of the main guys are rare. I think it's Greg Riles, I believe his name is. He's like one of the last OG guys are rare. He's now gone. We've seen the president of ZeniMax Online Studio. He's now gone as well. Does Xbox have a problem? Obviously, we've seen with Bethesda. We've seen some of the guys gone when the deal was finished. Of course, Todd Howard is still there. Does Microsoft risk losing talent here? Because even with the initiative, there was a lot of talent.
Most of them were gone though.
Some of them are gone, true, but the ones who are left over, is Xbox in a position now where they're going to have trouble attracting talent because they seem like such a hostile, inconsistent studio to work with. My critique here was if you're managing, if you're the creative lead of ZeniMax Online Studio or Rare, and you have a game in development for 7 to 10 years, I don't know what kind of talent that is. Now you can say no, that talent needs to be managed, and I would agree there. But I don't know if that's the biggest loss ever when the guy who's supposed to be running the studio is 10 years in and can't release the game. I think that's a
The heck?
things to Sony, for example. Does Sony see an individual who can ship a game in 10 years as talent that they want to keep? Does Nintendo see it that way? And the answer is no. I think Xbox is justified in that situation. Ushers, what are your thoughts on that?
As a talent, why would you want to go work for Microsoft though? Like, what are the incentives? Like, this is an environment clearly that's hostile towards creatives, where you're going to be promised that, like, you're going to be told whenever the head of the studio visits, like, wow, your project is doing great. We're going to give you all the time you need, only for whenever the annual results come out next month, you're getting shut down. Why would, as a talent, would you want to be part of a business like that there? In a creatively driven industry? Like, why would you leave any studio to go work for Microsoft? I think, in my opinion, they've created such a stigma in the industry that very few people are actually going to be attracted to go work at those studios.
Okay. Batikas, are you there or
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you, man.
All right, for sure.
Welcome to the podcast. I think you know who Oshus is. You might have come across Ken Wall before. But listen, tell us in relation to the closure of um, of the initiative and the cancellation of Everwild and the ZeniMax Online Studio game. What are your thoughts on? Well, I guess the question would be like, who do you point your finger at for these situations? Are you looking at Microsoft as a whole? You know, Amy Hood, Satya, or are you looking at the Xbox team, aka Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond, and Matt Booty as the
Mm.
prime suspects for these layoffs?
Mm. Well, I look at them as a whole because I feel like they were really ambitious in acquiring all of these. I guess you can say acquisition or making these acquisitions, and didn't really see. I guess you can say like didn't couldn't really foretell the future. They thought that us hypothetically thinking too. Maybe they thought that acquiring all of these acquisitions would equal out more product. Maybe they thought they would get more quality. Maybe they thought they'd get more quantity. I don't know. But I feel like Microsoft Xbox as a whole should be looked at. And I find it kind of suspicious too because Microsoft is an American company. And with the big beautiful bill being passed. it's very it's very like convenient for them to do these layoffs when they're about to get this big ass like cut, like tax cut. So it's just like it's if it seems like they basically bought a lot of things that they didn't know what to do with. And now they're cutting off the fat to make way for new money. So it seems like it's just business, but it's nasty business in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I get you. Let me catch up on some of these chats. Young Sandwiches, now we are seeing the fallout from that. I doubt many more studios are going to gravitate towards Xbox towards this, which is what Ushers was alluding to. Um, sorry, I have a bad throat. Hound says, yeah, sometimes not a whole lot of games. Well, I asked me if he plays Game Pass, and he says, yeah, sometimes not a whole lot of games I want to play on it. I have other old games that are on it. I did play Doom: The Dark Ages and enjoyed that quite a good bit. Ushers, I was gonna ask you a question that I just kind of slipped my mind. Um, damn, what was it again? Crap. It's at the tip of my tongue. Just give me a second. No, I've lost it. I've lost it. But those are really pretty much my talking points on the Xbox situation. But I guess yeah, actually, I just remembered it now. Perfect. Are these layoffs overall beneficial in terms of accountability to Xbox? And what I mean by that is, are we in a situation where the Xbox team has been coasting along, where everybody is in this dreamland utopia where you get 100 million to do what you want to do, you get 200 million, you get 300 million, but because now that Microsoft is scrutinizing the gaming arm, Phil Mabudi Sarah Bond, they all have to make business smart decisions. Indiana Jones gets greenlit. Games like Power World goes on Game Pass. Games like Clear Obscure goes on Game Pass. Games like um, Oblivion Remake gets a shot as well. But maybe games like Hellblade 2, games like South of Midnight, maybe these games are not worth it in the grand scheme of things. You can have an artistic game, but that doesn't mean your artistic game gets to fail and flop. An example could be the game Rematch. It's a small indie budget game. And, I'm going to reference Hi Fi Rush here again. Rematch came out, and in the space of a week, it's a small budget game. It's on Game Pass. And in the space of a week, it has 3 million players, 1 million sales, 2 million players from Game Pass, and all these other things. To that team, based on the budget, that is a successful game. And is Satya Nadella looking at Hi-Fi Rush and thinking, yeah, but Hi-Fi Rush costs way more to make, and it reached 3 million players in like 8 months, and it costs way more to make. Does Xbox now need to start making smart business decisions like a Sony does and like a Nintendo does? And if that's the case, my question to you guys is what we're seeing now actually going to deliver a much better Xbox in the future? Kenwell, I'll go to you first.
I can't be optimistic because it comes down to them not shipping games. They don't. I saw this CD Projekt Red documentary that GameSpot they made, right? And it goes into how CD Projekt Red, there's like legit documents, and you have the top guys, top developers, to the artists, the QA, all talking about what exactly they changed in the pipeline to make the development for their games go to be better. What is Xbox going to do? Like, you can cut stuff, but what are you guys going to change and make more efficient when it comes to these games? Because there is always something that is severely lacking when you make your games and when you release them. So I'm not going to be optimistic that this is going to help, because it's just they cut and nothing changes. So until then, I'm not going to be optimistic. I don't think this is going to do anything.
Okay. And Baticus Prime, what are your thoughts? Do you think this will lead to a better Xbox, or are you of the opinion, similar to Kenwell, that this is probably going to be worse, or it's probably just going to stay the same?
I feel like Xbox is always trying to do something to better their console for the players. So I'm a little optimistic about what they're planning on doing or what they're aiming to do. So I'm not gonna like count them out and say that nah, this is just gonna get worse. It's just downhill from here. I feel like they're doing what they feel like is the right thing to do, and they're making the right decisions in their mind. They feel like they're the right decisions. So I'm just gonna like let's see it unfold. Let's see how it goes. Cause like I said, I can't count them out. I can't just be like, oh no, this is all downhill here from here. You know?
Are you of the opinion that they're too big to fail?
Yeah, they are too big to fail.
Call
It's
of
like
Duty, Minecraft, Bethesda.
it's like I always think about the history of how they started, man. They started off with like being nothing, and then coming into something that they are now, which is like a large conglomerate. So it's like they recognize their place in the world. They're not going to compete. They're just going to be the third party to produce everything that comes to everyone. So it's like, and then they're going to try to gear it towards content creators. So I feel like, don't count them out, man. They're going to do something to turn it around.
So on one side we have the negative side of things with Ken, and then we have the positive side of things with Butticus. Ushers, you're going to be the tiebreaker. But before that, Young Sandwiches says it's almost like they have a dart on the board with all their studios, and that's how they decide who they are going to keep and who they are going to let go. You know, I've heard this echo actually because one of the guys, he thought for sure Ninja Theory is gone. And he also thought that compulsion games. And he felt that even, I think similar to what Usher is saying, that the studios like Elder Scrolls, sorry, ZeniMax Online, that because that game was in that shape, like at least it was, in a good position to actually do something in the future. And also um Perfect Dark, that those, even though you're angry at them, you would still greenlight those games and still let those games play out. But he feels that compulsion games as a studio cannot bring more value to Xbox than the initiative. Similar to what Usher said, fire the people who are problematic, bring in people who can fix the game, and then that's going to be your future play. But he's just thinking like, but what can compulsion games make that is going to even come close to what a Perfect Dark um, game could do? But anyways, Oshus, tell us, do you think this is a good thing overall for Xbox, or are you of the opinion that it doesn't matter what they do, they're cooked?
Yeah, no, like I'm in agreement with Kenwell. Like we've seen it too many times. Like like I appreciate people that are still optimistic about the Xbox brand. I hope you get the reward for that optimism in the end. But as someone that has been an Xbox fan now for a good over 20 years, I sort of know their patterns. And with the current leadership, I think we know exactly they've established their pattern in terms of how they do things. And I'm a huge believer that past results determine future results. And they have a business model, and it's a business model. It doesn't work, but it's a business model, which is just keep changing shit up. Look, in the long run, their publishing wing is going to carry them. They've got enough big IPs that will carry them, I think, for the next 5 to 10 years. But I think what everybody also is not looking at is the fact that there's also a huge, like, the moment you start to run studios with no talent and everything is trending away from you in terms of, like, well, people are outgrowing Call of Duty. People are outgrowing all these other IPs, these big IPs that you're putting all your effort into.
Guys, just a quick
Minecraft.
one. I need to just go
Yeah.
down, step outside for like 5 minutes. I'll be back, so y'all just speak.
So, okay, cool. So, like, I do feel that people are getting wary of like the products that Xbox has to offer. There's a lack of excitement, and like people like to say that like Call of Duty and Kenwell, I would like to, like, and Bactictus, you as well, as like I would like to what like know what you guys feel. You can't compare Call of Duty to say a GTA. When GTA comes around, it's always fresh because it took years for them to sort of make the new GTA. Whereas with Call of Duty, how were you guys excited when you saw that last trailer? Is that a game that you look at and you be like, whoa, I can't wait to get my hands on this? After Black Ops 6, we're getting Black Ops 7. Yay. So I do feel that like there's a lack of an enthusiasm for the games. I don't know what you guys think, and I'll hand it over to you.
You want to go first? You can go first.
Are you okay? Um, yeah, no, I don't have that many. I guess you can say enthusiastic feelings about future Xbox games. There's like one or two Xbox games that I'm like, I guess you can say interested in playing. But for the vast majority, I'm just like, nah, I'll just wait until it hits PlayStation. To be honest, because like I canceled my Game Pass a while ago. I think I canceled my Game Pass after or right before or after Liza P, and I just been playing everything on my Pro, and so now I'm just like, if it's not on PC or if it's not on PlayStation, I'm kind of just I'll wait on it. I'm not really pressed about it. I got other games to play.
Yeah. Yeah. It really sucks because I'm not. The only game I can say I'm playing day one would be Revolution, but it just still, because of everything that has just been done with Xbox, that excitement that you're talking about, Aushus, is like, it's not, I don't think it can come back. It's just not there for me. Where it's like, holy shit, this is, I gotta play this. And they've ruined Halo. Gears of War E-Day is going to be a standard ass game. It's going to be just cookie cutter game for the most part. I'm not too excited about that. So it's just it's just missing. And you're right. They're just going to lean on Call of Duty, Sea of Thieves, Minecraft, that type of stuff. But they're not. Where I could see them going is hiring like a contract studio, almost like the movie business, where they just hire it, they just fulfill their tasks, and then just move on. But I don't see where this goes. That's what's got me feeling really pessimistic ever since the announcement that they were going multi-platform. Because now there's nothing keeping you there. Like, there's just some shit that's got to be for me, and then there's shit that we can all share. But this, it's got to be for me. Xbox, the exclusives on Xbox got to be for Xbox, and now that's no more. So I don't see anything that could get me excited.
True, I agree. I'm in complete agreement.
It's so disappointing. It's so disappointing because rocking with the Xbox One, that was when I was like, oh shit, we're in trouble. And then Xbox Series X was looking a little better. But now it's the Xbox One really messed them up, bro. Like that console really.
But they abandoned the Series X.
What was that?
I won't forgive them for abandoning the Series X and S. I said I won't forgive them for abandoning the Series X and S.
Yeah, it was too soon.
I feel those consoles were just lit to die. Like even the support for the S. Like, I'm looking at games now. Like, I'm looking at just reviewers reviewing Switch 2 versions of games, and they're coming off sharper than the Series S. And I'm like, my man, like how do you fumble this so badly that you guys did not put that much effort into making sure the Series S is what you promised consumers? Like, I don't know, dude.
What's the question at hand?
Oh, we were just elaborating on on Xbox. We were saying, well, Aushus asked, is there going to be any other games that bring that wow factor when they come out? Like, what upcoming releases do they have that aren't like the Call of Duties, Minecraft, that's gonna at least help the brand out? And
But this was always my point, and it kind of goes to what Young Sandwiches is saying when he says, "I don't believe console exclusivity is a benefit to the consumer. Everything should be available everywhere." Even if Xbox was, to kind of keep focusing on exclusive games, just from a numbers perspective, there's no game that I've identified that says this is going to change Xbox's fortunes. Doom released on PlayStation 5, right? And it didn't even do those crazy numbers. So Doom was definitely not going to be that game. Outer Worlds 2 is definitely not going to be that game. It's always going to be Elder Scrolls that's going to, potentially bring some PlayStation users over. But at that point, that's way too far in, and you're losing out on crazy revenue by making Elder Scrolls exclusive. I don't know if the console users that you obtain becomes worth it, or at least that's what Microsoft is thinking. Okay, I think we might have run it off on those points when it comes to the layoffs. But okay, I'll pivot to this from an accountability point of view. Do you guys believe that someone needs to step down to at least show some kind of solidarity or even just from an accountability point of view that you did this, this was your fault, you made these decisions that led to thousands of people being laid off. What are your thoughts, but Prime?
Oh yeah, somebody definitely needs to take the fall for this because, I mean, these are people losing their jobs right now, and they're based off of upper management making poor decisions. So I feel like somebody needs to step down. That was a part of these poor decisions, and they're the ones that should be, I guess you could say, bearing the blunt of all of this, and not these employees that are getting laid off and fired. Because essentially, what they're doing is just cutting the fat. They're not even. It's not even. Is it really necessary? Is the question to lay off all of these people, and if money is the issue, then why don't you look at all the bonuses that you've been getting or giving to upper management when it comes to these acquisitions and other decisions that you made that led you to this point?
How about you, Ken? Do you think there needs to be accountability? Someone needs to get laid off or step down?
Yeah, in a perfect world, for sure, the buck needs to stop. But I think when you're that high up in the company, it's a period, sort of like a presidential term. I think they know. I believe Phil Spencer and the crew know that time is ticking for them, and now that they're not going to get an extension with this run. This is their run. This was their moment that they had, and at some point soon, leadership is going to change. So,
Anashas, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, man, fire Sarah Bond.
Zero Bond.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I was like, damn, why you put that one?
You went straight for the female black person.
Mhm.
Exactly. Like, yeah, that's the
That's the issue there.
That's the issue. This
that's
damn
that's
DEI
the
hire.
problem. That's the problem. Like, yeah, that's what those guys would say. It's like, yeah, sorry, I just couldn't resist. But yeah, in all honesty, in all honesty, dude, like, and I've been saying this, like, you know what? And like when you say like Matt Booty and Phil Spencer, like to me, like need to go together. Like the one needs to resign the day before, and then the other the next day. Because like Sarah Bond has earned like you know like I would love one of these those guys to actually try and debate me on Sarah Bond's value to Xbox. Sarah Bond has done what she was hired to do from day one, right? You can go look at what she's produced for the consumer, and you can look at what she's produced for the shareholder. She's brought her end. Phil Spencer, like no one has made more promises to gamers, I think, in the history of gaming, like than Phil Spencer, and has failed to produce. And of course, right behind him, of course, like they're like a double act is Matt Booty. Like those two guys for me have failed every single value proposition that they have sort of like put, as an Xbox guy first. I feel that like they have failed me. And again, they have failed me because of the fact that they've wasted so many opportunities. I don't know I don't know if it was you, Ty, that I was talking to, and I actually alluded to the fact that like Xbox has produced incredible hardware back to back. The Xbox One X, in my opinion, is still one of the best consoles ever made. No games for it. The whole time it was out, nothing came out for it. Zero, nothing. They just had like enhanced patches for older games, but nothing. Xbox released nothing to support that console, which is very different from the PS4 Pro. And then the Series X and S, same situation. Amazing console, but nothing to sort of show how amazing that console is that can be compared to even second party games like Stellar Blade, like Silent Hill 3, and first party offerings from PlayStation during this generation, like the Dark Souls remaster and all the other games that they've made that look amazing. There is nothing for the Series X except maybe for Hellblade, which again was too little too late, and again was not a complete, and you, Taye, would attest to this, was not a complete experience in the same way God of War is a complete experience.
Mhm.
So, like, they produced this incredible hardware and they support it with no games. What are the killer apps for the Series X and S?
For some people, that would be Starfield.
Starfield is, and I'll concede that Starfield is the only killer app for
What
Xbox.
about Redfall?
Yeah, it was a killer something already.
Okay. No, I understand where you guys are coming from. I think we're more or less in agreement. While I'll say for Phil, I expect something to probably happen maybe at the launch of the next Xbox. The next Xbox, probably when the next Xbox is gonna launch. I think he probably wants to leave at a high note and pass on to Sarah Bonova, who takes over. For me, if I was a marketing guy, I would tell him probably drop down after Fable drops and it's a 10 out of 10 game. Drop on a high note, right? That'll be the smartest thing for you to do, and then let Sarah take over. But also, I think something we need to realize is a lot of us who are having these discussions and topics, we are not the core. We're not the majority. I was pointing out to someone how the Xbox YouTube channel announced their, hey, we're working with AMD video, and that video was in the hundreds of thousands, right? And then you have this whole Xbox employee, Xbox founder, make a video about how Xbox is this, Xbox is that, just 50, 40K views. And if you were to go on Twitter, you would think that that video that she made was more popular or had more views than the actual Xbox video based on the way everyone was talking about it online. And the fact that the views don't even correlate just shows you that we're kind of in this bubble where the reason why this news is so important or it's getting so much traction is because we are the ones invested in this news. We are the ones who are only concerned about this news. Yes, Microsoft laid off employees and the Xbox division got hit, but a lot of other people got hit within the Microsoft ecosystem. An additional 7,000 people, 6,000 people got hit, and we don't talk about that because we don't really know about it. We don't really care about it because it doesn't affect us. So, I think that's an important point to make out. Moving on to, I guess before we bounce off, we'll move on to the Game Pass discussions again. I had a back and forth with someone online who said a lot of these numbers or these cuts are directly a result of Game Pass. And I always find this discussion interesting because all you have to do is say is, well, if Game Pass didn't exist, would these cuts happen? Would Everwild still get cancelled after 10 years of development? Would the initiative game still get cancelled after 7 years of development with no end in sight? And if the answer is always yes, then I don't know how you come to the conclusion that the cuts are because of Game Pass. You could say it's a contributing factor, sure, but how much of that plays into that contribution is the question. Batica's Prime, I'll ask you, because I might be wrong. How much of Game Pass do you think Game Pass and the failure might be a strong word, but Game Pass and its inability to reach Microsoft's expectation? I believe by 2025 they expected 50 to 55 million users, and as of 2025 they only have probably 34 or 35. So that's a 15 million dip. So based on that, do you think these cuts were a result of Game Pass's failure to catch new users?
No, I can't. I can't say that. I can't say that it played a major part because I mean, you're talking to somebody who canceled their Game Pass a while ago, and it wasn't.
So
It
it's your
wasn't.
fault, eh?
It's my fault. Yeah, totally blame me. Um, and the reason why I didn't cut it was because of I guess you can say the lack of accessibility of Game Pass, or the lack of, I guess you can say, yeah, that's all it is really, is accessibility. No, it wasn't. Game Pass wasn't the reason why I cut it. It was Xbox and the games itself. Like, I was only using Game Pass as a tester for like games I might want to play. And if they came to PlayStation, that's a bonus, because either I played like Liza P. I played it on Game Pass. I liked it. I bought it on PlayStation. There it is. Well, in my opinion, like, if you had more games that were available, that were, I guess you can say, caught my attention, then I probably would have kept my Game Pass. But since there weren't that many games that, like, you know what I'm saying, that I was interested in, I felt there was no reason for me to have a Game Pass.
Okay.
So nah, I don't equate Game Pass as being a part of the failure. Maybe it played a small part, but nah, that's definitely upper management. That's definitely the higher ups and whoever made the decisions. It's
Mhm.
not Game Pass, in my opinion.
Kenwell, how about you? What are your thoughts on the Game Pass question being brought up again?
I'm still rocking with Game Pass. They had to do something to stand out because, like you were saying, the exclusives on Xbox weren't going to help. The exclusives weren't going to help. But at the time with the Xbox One, they had to do a major pivot, and I think it was a bet that was worth taking. It's just the execution that fell apart. Every single time they wanted to do something, it failed, and they didn't understand failing as part of it, and then they just switched it every single time. I think a few things that could have helped was not going full force with the first party day one. I think they could have eased into that if they really needed to pull the trigger on this thing working immediately, and focusing on more smaller games for Game Pass and building up. But again, the execution was terrible, which made them have to change every single second, just pivot, and it didn't work. So I'm still rocking with Game Pass. It was a bet that was worth taking. It's just their execution failed them.
Mhm.
And if I can just say
Fire
one
away.
more thing, if I can say one more thing about Game Pass, like, to be honest with you, I believe that it would have been the best decision to make Game Pass of like what it is when they have a lot of indie developers. Because to be honest with you, the games that I'm interested in that are coming out on Xbox alone are from these indie developers. If you had a lot of these newer games that we see coming out now that were just on Game Pass and none other console, then that would probably make Game Pass even more, I guess you can say, a standpoint, a standout feature for Xbox.
Mhm. Cautious. Fire away. Tell us, is this a Game Pass problem or are people reaching?
Well, I mean, again, was Game Pass given its fair shake? Because it seems like they're pivoting away from Game Pass to third party fully. Because again, a lot of these games would have never been cancelled under the Game Pass model that Phil Spencer proposed. His whole proposition was this, and he reiterated this as much as he's reiterating this new message of like, we're only going to support successful games. Back in the day, when he was trying to sell Game Pass, he kept saying that a game's success doesn't matter. We don't care about sales because we know that the game will survive continually on Game Pass, whether it sells 10 million or it sells 10,000. It will live on Game Pass. As a result, it will become successful eventually. So every game is guaranteed to be successful. That's the Game Pass model. That's basically what we're going with. Now they seem to be changing that. That message is different now. The message is we only support the games that are successful in terms of across platforms, right? So it has to be successful on PlayStation, on PC, and on Xbox, and whatever other platform it's available on for us to sort of give it our full support. So again, another example of Xbox pivoting in the middle of a strategy without actually following through, so they can tell us, well, our strategy with Game Pass was successful. We will never know because they've already pivoted. Otherwise, Hi-Fi Rush would still be alive and they would still have Tango Gameworks, because that is what Game Pass was supposed to support. Studios with a creative vision. It's the same reason it launched. It was, well, what is it? What they call it? It was Shadow Dropped. Because again, Game Pass can support a game indefinitely without needing to sell a lot of units. That is their strategy. What happened to that strategy?
I think this is probably an issue with Phil and the guys on Xbox talking a lot more and being involved with the community, because they'll say truths, but they might not say the like what are the potential negatives of Game Pass. Game Pass is meant to probably support these kind of smaller games, and it can't do that because there's a reason why a lot of indie games are on Game Pass, right? It's because they like to reach, and people on Game Pass plays it. So for that reason, I get where Xbox is coming from. I get where Phil is coming from. The truth is, but that equation only makes sense a lot of time when the platform is actually growing and it's just stagnated. So they were speaking from a future tense that, yeah, Game Pass will support these smaller games, and it did, and it still does. But obviously they're looking at it saying, yeah, but this was off the back of the idea that Game Pass will be growing and growing on a regular basis. If it doesn't grow, then how can we support these games? In the same way, how if the console doesn't grow, well, how can we support new games? Because we're not making that much money, right? I think that's where it's really coming from. But yeah, I take you guys' points. To end on maybe a more interesting note or a nicer note. Veterus, the developer of Oblivion Remastered, Metal Gear Solid Delta, and makers of Switch ports, have given their analysis on the Switch 2. They've said that the GPU performance is slightly below the Series S, but Switch 2 has a DLSS, which makes the two consoles comparable. Switch's 2 CPU is closer to the PS4, but a lot more powerful. Any game shipping at 60 FPS on the Series S should easily port over to the Switch 2. Switch 2 will be successful. Ken, when you hear that, are you now in a position where you're more of the opinion that Nintendo will get pretty much every third-party game going forward, and GTA 6 will be able to run on the Switch too? What are your thoughts?
Holy shit, GTA 6. Yeah, it's gonna be like the pocket size version. Like, I think they did that with one of the Final Fantasy games, but it's gonna be interesting getting that. But yeah, I definitely see the Switch 2 having a lot, the majority of the third-party games. That's what I originally thought the Switch 2 was gonna be more of. Now that it's got the specs like that, I think that's really good for Nintendo, because it, for me personally, it reminds me of GameCube, and that's one of my favorite consoles. There was a lot of third-party support, and I know GameCube wasn't their best console, but it's my favorite, and that's one of the reasons why you got the Nintendo games, and you also had the third-party games. So I like that Nintendo's is doing this. I also have to put some more respect on the Series S, because I thought I didn't like the idea of the Series S, but like Aushis was saying, they can make some pretty damn good hardware, and it's a shame that they can't fully utilize it. But yeah, props to Nintendo.
Aushis, what's your take? Are we about to see a situation where pretty much every third-party game comes out on the Series S, and we get a potential GTA 6 at some point?
Yeah, like I think I was talking to you where I said if you if you look in hindsight and you look at the gaming landscape, Nintendo won. I think if you're a person, if you could go back to like the N64 era, like which was like probably the worst era for Nintendo, and you look at where they are now in terms of market position, they won. They are more secure in their business model than both Sony and Microsoft. Nintendo knows exactly what they're doing, and they know that it's going to be profitable. Like, there's no more confidence that I think any company in any industry needs than that, to know that whatever you do is going to be successful. So, going to your question about third party, so far it looks good, but I feel like I'm worried when I hear reports about the fact that Nintendo's actually, they're not putting as much effort as I would say their counterparts would to sort of cultivate third party, because of the fact that that's not really where they make most of their money anyway. So that's the only worrying things that I've heard reports of the fact that, like, third party studios don't feel as supported by Nintendo as they do by Microsoft and Sony. And I think they need to fix that if that's something they care about for their business. But in terms of the actual platform itself and the fact that it uses NVIDIA, great for them. And I was saying earlier as well is that their support for their hardware is, to me, it's a little bit, it makes me give Microsoft the side eye. The fact that Nintendo, with lesser hardware, you are getting better versions of games like Street Fighter on Nintendo than on the Series S. It tells me again that Microsoft is very negligent when it comes to their hardware. They really don't focus on supporting it after it's released. But I really want a Nintendo to sort of give more of, like, you know, like a leg up to the guys that are supporting them in terms of third party wise. That's the only thing I have against their current strategy, is that I don't think they're very focused on organically sort of getting devs on board the same way Sony does with like a Stellar Blade, with like a Silent Hill 3. I don't think Nintendo's doing that, and I don't think it's good for them not to do that. They need to start doing that. Stop just leaving people out there to discover your hardware on their own. Give them support like Sony does.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I have to say.
I agree. And before we round off, there's a few questions in the chat that I'll post to you guys. So, Young Sandwiches says, so what constitutes a successful game on Game Pass for Xbox? What benchmarks are they looking for? Ken, do you have any inclination how Xbox decides what is a successful Game Pass game? That's like, nah, bro, I don't know nothing.
Loaded question.
Yeah, because it's like Hi-Fi Rush was successful, and it was gut. So, like, shit, even Redfall wasn't successful when it first came out. So I don't even know what constitutes for a good Game Pass game, because they keep pivoting. We don't know what's going on exactly when it comes to this. So it's hard. It's hard. I don't have an answer for that. I don't have an answer for that at all.
Yo, Batikus, do you have an answer? What is a successful Game Pass? Well, not even Game Pass. What is a successful game to Microsoft?
To Microsoft, that's a loaded ass question, man. That's a landmine waiting to explode, because, like, I think it was Oshis that said it earlier. Phil Spencer said his game model for Game Pass, and they pivoted, right? He just said Hi-Fi Rush was a success, which I agree, it was a success, and then they gutted it, right? They just keep pivoting. It's like, we can say it's not sales, but then again, they do certain things and certain actions that revert that. It says that, yeah, sales does matter to them. And then sales comes out and they show off something successful, and then they pivot and say, nah, it's not just about the sales. So it's like, it is a hard ass question to answer, because we don't fucking know what their idea of a successful game is. In my opinion, I don't think they know what they have. Like, they have successful items and features. They have successful games and features, and they just don't support them.
Josh, how about you? You gonna take a stab? What is a success?
No, man. Like, I agree with the two previous panelists, man. Like, they're 100% spot on. I don't think there's anything I could add to that. I think they put it perfectly. Is that like, and I've said this to you, Ty, like several times in our conversations in terms of like, I don't understand Microsoft's model for success in this industry, to be honest. And as a result of that, I can't tell you whether or not they have a successful product or yeah, because I don't understand how they measure success. And I agree with both Batictus and as well as what call it as Kenwell is that who knows? Only Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond, and Matt Booty know, and they're the people they report to know what's in their success under Microsoft.
And it
Mhm.
seems like they're conflicted.
Yeah, man. Like the only game that I can for sure say was successful under Microsoft's watch is Forza Horizon 5 in terms of this generation. I think everybody can accept that that game was successful in terms of like game that they published.
Yeah.
Every other game we don't know because we thought Halo Infinite was successful. Well, you listen to the chatter, not so much.
Yep.
And then you can go in with every single other first party game because the same thing with Starfield. Well, we thought Starfield was successful. Expectations wise, there's a lot of talk about this and this and this and this and this. So we don't know. Only Microsoft knows.
Okay. Let's move on to another statement, but this is more of me piggybacking off it. And we're talking about Bobby Kotick, and Young Sandwiches says, bring back Kotick, as a joke, I'm guessing, or maybe not. And the statement here was, say what you will about Bobby, but he never lied to us about what he's going to do. Ushers, I'll go to you first. Are we in a situation now where Phil Spencer could actually be looked at as being like similar or close to worse than Bobby Kotick? Kotick, sorry.
Jeez. Like the problem is like, and I've said this to you, like as someone that's an Xbox fan, I've got I think Phil Spencer's legacy ended very badly. It started off fantastic, and it ended off very badly. Like all the promises initially were very appealing, but nothing was delivered. Which is very different from Bobby's legacy. Bobby's legacy was never one of, he never tried or pretended to be a pro gamer first. He always made it very clear that it was about the business, it was about the shareholders. That's it. So I don't think anyone was a fan of Bobby Kotick or Activision under Bobby Kotick in terms of like when it became its most successful. So I will still say that overall, Phil Spencer, he gave us hope long enough. So to me, that is that I have to give him credit for that. That for a dead brand that we started believing in, I think back in the mid 2000s, he gave us hope that it could work. Whereas there's nothing I can attribute to Bobby Kotick. Like I don't like Activision's games that way. I'm not that attached to Call of Duty that I could say, "Woo, Call of Duty is gonna make a difference in my year or whenever it comes out." No, so I can't say anything about what he's produced. But Phil Spencer has tried, and he's produced games that I love, or he's published games that I love earlier on in his career. So Phil Spencer, I think, will have a better legacy overall. But again, he will always be considered. Now, if we're going the direction I think we're going, he's going to be considered the guy that killed Xbox, unfortunately.
Okay, next point. Hound says, will Microsoft keep making the Xbox consoles? It seems to me they just want to make games and have them on every console and PC. Panicos Prime, I'll go to you first. What is Xbox's vision when it comes to the hardware space? Are they trying to just gracefully exit? Are they trying to hard exit? Or are they actually trying to stay in the console space?
I think they found their place in the space. I think they found that they need to just become that third party and make all their games available to every console and everybody, and not even try to just compete in this exclusivity war, because man, Nintendo is the only one that can win in the exclusivity war. and they've recognized that they're not going to be able to compete with both Nintendo and PlayStation at the same time. So I believe that they're going full third party. Like I believe it's just the way. It's just the way that they have to go. It's just the way that they figure that it is what it is.
Yeah. Ushers, what about you? What are your thoughts on Microsoft and sorry, not Microsoft, Xbox on hardware?
Yeah, no, I agree with Batictus. Like, I don't think there's much wiggle room left. I think they've sort of like they're putting all their bets behind an app, and that's where they're going because they're a software company primarily. And I've said this to you as well before: is that software first, and that is their approach going forward. Is that they're going to double down on software instead of hardware. And I'm curious to see. It's going to make things interesting, but I'm curious to see how Sony reacts to all this. To me, that's the interesting factor. But the downside is that for console gamers, unfortunately, you've reached the end of console gaming being exciting. I don't think console gaming is going to become more exciting going forward because there's no competition. Unless the only time you're going to get like really, really hardcore competition is if Sony launches a handheld that competes with Nintendo.
But
Then we'll have a competition.
But Oshis, can I ask you a question? I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
Do you think that there will be a competition of excitement of games of software, like because you see what these indie developers are doing?
Yeah, absolutely.
And they are the ones that's kind of like running the market right now because they have all the dope games coming out in the future.
So again, I look at Xbox's position and I look at Sony's position, and I look at games that are out there that are like that were probably AA games that became AAA games, like Stellar Blade, and I still feel that Sony is in a better position to take advantage of that. And even Nintendo, in my opinion, is in a better position to take advantage of that versus Xbox. Yes, you could argue that Xbox could have games on Game Pass like Expedition 33, but they will never sort of like put the sort of I don't see them supporting games like like if Xbox was doing what Sony's doing or what Nintendo's doing, Expedition 33 would have probably been an Xbox supported second party game that was released first on Xbox as an exclusive. I don't see them doing that going forward. Whereas Sony and then Nintendo are doing that.
I was gonna say, what about Mecha Break? Mecha Break is one of those games that's not.
But it's
available.
a free game, so that's another thing. It's like it's a free to play game, so it's very hard to gauge. But like it's very similar to what they did with Pal World. I thought that was a great move, but I felt that like they didn't leverage that to sell hardware, which they could have, and it could have worked for them, and it would have benefited them to do that. But the way that they approach is like it's so difficult to read, man. Like it's because they're doing something completely different. I can tell you what Sony and Nintendo are doing. They're doing something that we cannot predict because we don't have any sort of past model for it.
And that's for sure.
Okay. Ken Wall, did I ask you already?
No, actually, I think what was the original question again about
how do you feel about Xbox or Microsoft going full console or full third party and not focusing on hardware?
Yeah, like do you think they're gonna go full third party or is it a situation where?
Yeah, I definitely think they'll go full publisher at some point. I think obviously we know they are coming out with another console. It depends on how technology progresses. They got to figure out a way on digital ownership with these games. I think that's when you'll start seeing the physical console for Xbox just phase out when there's digital rights for the games that we've previously owned before. So yeah, I'm fully on board with what you guys have been saying. I think we all know that that they just there's nothing left. The telltale sign is they're selling their ass just for Steam with their next console. Like, that doesn't make sense, but it's the last card they could do. So yeah, that console's cooked.
Okay. I guess we're done for today then. Listen, guys, thanks for coming through.
No worries.
Baticus Prime, can you plug your channel, please, so people can know where to find you?
Oh, for sure, indeed. Every Monday and Wednesday, you can find me 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. That's West Coast time. Twitch.tv/Baticus_Prime. YouTube.com/@Baticus_Prime. Or if you have kick.com/Baticus-Prime. It's all the same. And then you can always follow me on Twitter. It's Baticus_Prime. It's all the same.
Yeah, to you guys, listen, you'll be seeing more about Baticus Prime around, so maybe next week as well. He'll come through and share some of his insights. Because you never know, Xbox is always dropping something. They're always doing something, so there's always something to talk about. Ken Wall, please let us know where we can find you and tell us what you're up to these days.
All right, you can find me on YouTube at Ken Wall, and also TikTok, Ken Wall, and X. I've been trying to post more on X just to get my thoughts out there and just keep a steady diet of me being on social media, putting out content, because now I'm getting back to it. I'm getting back to the videos now, so I'm excited for what's to come. So yeah, check me out there.
I've been seeing a lot of your posts on Twitter, actually, where you're posting like detailed analysis on like specific questions a lot.
Yeah. I'm trying. I don't really know what sticks on. Like, I've always been confused with the posts that get retweeted, reposted, commented. I'm like, do you use hashtags? But then I don't see any hashtags. I'm confused. So I'm just going with it.
Yeah, keep out of it.
Worry about that stuff. Yeah,
they're educational. At least to me, anyway.
I appreciate it. Appreciate it, bro.
Ushers, tell us what you're up to. Where can we find you? Are you planning on dropping a video soon?
Yeah, like I've got like 2 videos that I just need to actually just get to and finish. But in terms of where I'm most active currently, I'm mostly active on X. That's the primary platform. YouTube, I plan to be active. It's just a matter of time. But like, yeah, for now, you can find me on X, OzTheWiz or Osha07. I also interact regularly. I used to be a moderator in that community. Xbox Players SA on Facebook. I'm also there. I post a lot. But yeah, always a pleasure to be in these spaces. As well as on Thursdays, I'm with you and Loke on Loke's show. They say we say.
Okay, listen, Hound and Young Sandwiches, thanks for coming through. I'll ask Hound's last question, where he says he played the Altars. I did. I was destroyed by the first real fight. I got turn-based combat is my real weakness in games. Okay, we were talking about Clear Obscure, and he's not interested in turn-based games. I mentioned how how Expedition 33, has the active gameplay mechanic that might, turn a few heads. And I think it has. A lot of people who are not interested in turn-based are looking at that as their way to get in. But for some people, it's still the same thing, It's, waiting and pressing. They want to be actively moving around. Once I finish the Altars, I'll get back to Club Obscure. But until then, the Altars is what I'm playing, and I'm looking forward to.
No, you gotta get back into Claire, bro.
You said you finished it?
I did. Yeah, I finished it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Claire was, man. It's hard, but it's one of my game of the years for sure. One of my game of the years.
Everybody's dying by Clear Obscure this year.
Obscure is
Yeah.
tough, man.
I think if Clear Obscure wasn't out this year, I think that there's a high chance that Kojima could have gone there potentially. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, but unfortunate for him. I think it's a little bit upsetting then, in the sense, for at least the Xbox, that they're dropping Outer Worlds 2 this year, and I don't even know if that's gonna make the nomination. I can't really see it getting there in any way, shape, or form.
Xbox never has a game of the year contender.
Oh, Forza was the only game of the year contender.
Oh, yeah.
That was
It
but,
was.
it was a racing game, so they all discriminated against it.
Yep.
But listen, Young Sandwiches, Hound, and Gaming Over 30 was here early on. He's actually now on the Iron Lords, podcasting with those guys. I'll get him on here one of these days, specifically to talk about the Xbox layoffs, and he gives a lot of business insight as to why things are happening. He's a bit detached from the feelings approach of things. He just looks at the numbers. Why is this happening? And he looks at the wider trend within the industry. So yeah, he gives good context and analysis on these things. I believe he works in probably project management, and he does a lot of these business, or at least he's involved in some of these business and managing projects. So some good insights. But yeah, go over to the Iron Lords if you guys want to check that out. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week.